Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Just a little bit more about today's meeting, but this particular Zoom session. So it is being recorded because we are sharing these events on YouTube afterward. But your names and the chat are not being recorded. We're going to edit the recording and post it to our YouTube channel, but it's also being live streamed. So there's a live stream version on YouTube. And then in the end, we'll just sort of clean up the beginning and the end for the final product. There is going to be a Q&A session at the end of our session today. And so you can raise your hand in Zoom and unmute yourself to ask the question, and I'll call on people. Keep yourself muted, please, in the meantime, just to limit background noise. And you're always welcome to post comments in the chat as we go. Okay, and now actually we can introduce our speaker. So Kelson Dorche-Bhutia, he is a visiting scholar currently in the Asian Studies program at the University of California, Riverside. Kelson holds a PhD in Buddhist Studies from the University of Delhi, which he received in 2014. And his dissertation focuses on the role of Buddhism as an anti-colonial force, as depicted in a Tibetan language work on the history of Sikkim, the Drejung Gyalrap. Kelson has a very impressive CV. He has a long list of academic articles, and everything I've read by him has been really inspiring. So we're really lucky to have him here today. His research focuses on environmental and interspecies histories of the Himalayas, on local responses to climate change in the Himalayas, Buddhism and ecology, environmental and traditional law in South and East Asia, and finally on local and decolonial histories of the Himalayas. Kelsang was awarded in 2021 the position of the Dalai Lama Fellow, the Foundation for Universal Responsibility. And in 2019, he was the Robert H.N. Ho Research Fellow in Buddhist Studies as part of the American Council of Learned Societies. Kelsang asked me to keep the intro short, so, so I will do so. And I will come back to you so you can see me. And so one thing I'll say before we start today is that like my own internet connection, which is very inconsistent, Kelsang was having trouble with his recently. And so he decided to pre-record the talk and share with us, and then we could stream it from the university internet connection that we have in Toronto, which is much more stable. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show the video of his talk, and then we'll have a live Q&A after. So Betsy, do you want to cue the video? Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm going to play the video on Zoom. If you're having any problems with the video on Zoom, I posted the link to the video, which is also available currently on our YouTube channel. So you'll have a better resolution. And just remember to come back here at the end for the Q&A. So you can, if you need to watch it there, it might be a little bit more easy to hear or see. I don't know. We'll see how this works for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Does that look right?
Yes, looks good.
Kuzambo, Kamrimo, Sevaro, Tashdele. My name is Kelsang Dorche-Bhutia, and I greet all of you with hope that you all are keeping safe and healthy in these challenging times. I'm speaking from Los Angeles, the land of Tongva people. I thank my gracious host in Toronto, Professor Rory Lindsay and Professor Francis Garrett for this opportunity. Finally, I acknowledge the beings in my homeland of Sikkim, which I will discuss today, including all the protected deities in my community at home. And beginning with that, I'll just show you quickly a map of all the sacred sites which all these deities are staying. So today I will talk about post-human and beyond human relationships by talking about something that can all bring us joy in these times, and that is nothing other than food, shela. So some of the items that I'm going to talk about it today, and particularly, the surprising recent rise to fame of one of the staples in my home region, that happened in 2017. One of my sister-in-law informed me of a surprising development in my village in West Sikkim. A number of our extended families were changing their usual agricultural planting patterns. Usually, instead of planting staples such as maize and mustard greens in the kitchen gardens, they were planting a popular chili, which in the Bhutia language, we call it akubari, So this chili is also known as dalle khorsani. The mostly spoken language in the multilingual and multi-ethnic state of Sikkim in the Indian Himalayas. Dalle here means round. Okay, so it's kind of a round chili. So from the family of Solanaceae and the genus Capsicum annum, all of these different ethnic communities of Sikkim, which includes all the people, including Bhutias, Lepchas, Suba, also known as Chongs, and Sherpa, Chetri, Newar, Mangars, all the communities, and many more. They all enjoy this chili, akubari. This change to usual crop pattern was due to economic incentive. There is an agent from Patanjali. I think you all know the famous Patanjali, an internationally known Indian household brand run by the global yoga guru. Yoga guru famously known as Ramdev, yoga guru Ramdev. There was a rumor saying that Yoga Guru Ramdev visited the area. That's the West Sikkim area, and supposedly he has told all the farmers that he wanted to buy their crops. So akubari was sought after by Patanjali to produce and promote akubari-based pickles and sauces for their brand. So the interest in this homegrown staple was accepted with enthusiasm, but also surprise. So this surprise was derived from the heat associated with akubari, which I'm going to explore further. So this small round chili, which is known as dalle chili, looks deceptively like a red cherry, which is why in English it is often referred to as red hot cherry pepper. It sounds like a band name. But locals of the small Northeast Indian state of Sikkim and in the nearby Darjeeling region have been they've been historically very cautious about the amount that they serve to their guests because of the hotness. So akubari has been rated in the range of somewhere around 100,000 to 350,000 Scoville heat units. So this is less spicy than the famous Northeast Indian Bhut Jolokia. They call it Bhut Jolokia, but translated into English known as the ghost chili, which is very popular these days, even in West. Or known as Naga Jolokia, since it's very popular in Nagaland, in the northeastern part of the Indian state. So within local households, across the different ethnic and cultural and religious communities of Sikkim and Darjeeling region, akubari is a spicy staple served either raw, just like that you can see in the PowerPoint, raw and sometimes like sliced up. It's got that pungency, or as a pickle, or dipped in sauce. You can find them on the sides of rice plates, okay, which served with rice, dal bhat sabji, with lentils, vegetables, meat, and other local delicacies. You often find them when you actually go to local places. In Bhutia language, the word we use, akubari, is revealing for what it tells us about the role of this chili in cultivating commensality in our communities. Aku literally means uncle, and bari means blazing. So, so bari, it means blazing. So if you put those words, it becomes like blazing uncle. It's kind of very deadly, blazing uncle. So akubari is considered to be a kin, a family member, but one that should be respected for its power. So in this presentation, I will refer to him with a masculine pronoun to acknowledge this agency. So then the question arises, what happens when Uncle Chili, as I will refer to him here, moves beyond the kitchen gardens and forest of Sikkim? In many ways, the sudden growth in interest in Uncle Chili is not surprising, given the growth in interest in exotic forms of chilies documented around the world in the last 3 decades, and the rise of Sikkim state as a popular tourist destination, and for the state government's organic green initiatives. But these initiatives have been critiqued for their hypocrisies, as while Sikkim is supposedly organic and environmentally friendly, the government has allowed for unprecedented infrastructure projects to proceed that have been environmentally destructive. These projects, including many mega dams, have inspired activism in response to detrimental impacts of such neoliberal intervention. The movement of Uncle Chili from the tables of rural communities in Sikkim and Darjeeling to the tables of urban India can be read as yet another example of neoliberal exploitation, in this instance, of traditional food waste. Here I want to trace the movement of Uncle Chili as a way to think about the changing economics of value and scale around him, and what the popularity of this chili suggests to us about changing interspecies relations in the Himalayas. Uncle Chili's fame was vividly demonstrated when in August 2020, the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade of the Government of India granted a geographic indicator tag to him. The GI tag recognition was hailed in the local media as an excellent marketing opportunity for Akubari pickle and some other Sikkimese products. It also represents the latest episodes in the historical promotion of Northeast India as Empire's Garden, to borrow the wonderful University of Toronto historian Jayata Sharma's term. This also demonstrates Sikkim's position as a commodity forest. Sikkim first appeared on maps of British Empire due to its proximity to Tibet and for its many botanical species. Orchids and tea were both found in the forest of Sikkim and removed with other commodity items for imperial consumption. So this was accompanied by the development of plantation labor economics and the decimation of local sovereignty. In 1835, Darjeeling was leased by the British administration from King of Sikkim in order to establish tea gardens. In 1849, Darjeeling was annexed from Sikkim. In the decades following this incident, Sikkim came under the control of British, and by the time it was observed by India in 1975, had already been controlled by political officers for decades, and private companies also opened. Uncle Chili was first produced commercially in Sikkim in 1996, and this led to the creation of many local pickling companies that came up. The success of these companies paved way for Patanjali, but the creation of Akubari as a product can be traced back to its position as the fueler of commensality. To consider this position, we must move back to examine whether Akubari is held to have, where Akubari is held to have come from. Akubari in kitchen gardens with seeds taken from the forest. Almost half of the Sikkim is covered by thick forest. Since the I forgot to show this clip. This is when Akubari got the GI tag. So as I was saying, almost half of the state of Sikkim is covered by thick forest. Since the terrain varies so greatly from mountainous areas to low river valleys, there are a number of different forest types and many species in it. In historical Lepcha, Bhutia, and Suba communities in West Sikkim, the forest was regarded as an integral element of everyday life. In that, you can find all sorts of other things like mushrooms and herbs provided food. Fallen branches made fuel for the fire, and shelter was hewn from trees. The forest was not only a place for resources for human extraction. It was understood as part of an interspecies matrix inhabited by spirits and deities, and needed careful and respectful care to continue to establish human flourishing, and who were and continue to be frequently considered as kin or extended family for human Buddhist communities in West Sikkim. In Buddhist traditions, these beings were known as Dharma protectors of the land, word used as locally known as in Buddhist as Chekyong, sometimes also known as Yula and Jida. And Buddhism met with local traditions to develop a set of ritual practices to facilitate communications and care between humans and non-humans of Sikkim's habitat. Some of this care took the form of local prohibitions against cutting down trees or guidance about where to dispose of human waste to avoid polluting rivers and streams that brought water to human settlements from the glaciers above, very clean glaciers. Indigenous Lepcha and Buddhist spiritual life was concerned with educating humans on appropriate interactions with the forest. A local healing system known as green or herbal medicine, in Bhutia known as Homen, was practiced among villagers in Sikkim. It represented a synthesis of indigenous Lepcha and imported Tibetan Buddhist and other local medical practices, and continues in contemporary communities where it is part of the rich medical diversity of Sikkim that includes Buddhist, Lepcha, Jagri, Damai, Ayurvedic, allopathic, and other forms of medicine. The practitioners of Homen include Lepcha Bongtings, which is the Bongting equivalent of shamans, and Bhutia healers, and other medical practitioners that do not always carry titles, but are respected for carrying the knowledge of healing. To green medicine practitioners, the forest is a living garden filled with kin and relations. And their initiation and training gained during apprenticeship with senior healers provides them with a deep knowledge of the different elements of this garden. Ajo Wangyal, a Homen practitioner, described this knowledge to me personally, and in his words, quote, Homen introduces us to the door of the forest. We need to know where the door is to enter. You cannot just enter from anywhere. If you are looking for something in particular, you need to tell the forest what it is by introducing yourself with a chant and mantra when you arrive. The forest will then help you to find what it is you need, but you should only take what is necessary, end quote. This concern for not depleting the forest is central to the balance that Homen practitioners strive to achieve. This balance will make humans and other beings around them healthy, humans and non-humans. This balance will lead to lack of harmony and illness. The concern for depletion was important. Early texts about Sikkim's landscape represent it as a place of abundance. In indigenous cosmologies, Lepcha or Rong communities considered Sikkim to be Maya Liang in their term, the Rong term, Rong which means Lepcha. In the Lepcha term, the original name of Sikkim is known as Maya Liang, which means heavenly paradise on earth. In Buddhist cosmology, Sikkim was historically conceived of as a hidden land, or known as a bayou, set aside by the great tantric master Guru Rinpoche, in the 8th century to act as a safe haven for Tibetan Buddhists. After the departure of Guru Rinpoche, over the following centuries, a number of yogis associated with his lineage visited Sikkim and wrote numerous pilgrimage guidebooks to the sacred habitat that vividly describes its abundance. So this abundance was understood to be represented by many edible elements of the forest. Even in contemporary Sikkim, foraged food from the forest features in many dishes. And Uncle Chili is one of them. Uncle Chili is considered to be a forest-derived chili. And this has contributed to the belief that Uncle Chili are a native plant, a very important statement there. Uncle Chili are used in medicinal diets to help treat stomach ulcers and other gastrointestinal issues. An important reason for this is that they do not cause discomfort during digestion and bowel movements. It means it doesn't burn. The heat is not as severe because you can tell from the easy bowel movements. Uncle Chili can also be an appetizer and are seen as efficacious for people experiencing nausea. And Uncle Chili, along with other forest foods, may well have originated in other parts of the world, but their habituation to Sikkim's forest and widespread use has rendered them as local. So in West Sikkim, the forest is a place of abundance, but also danger, which is quite interesting in that way. Special spiritual preparation is needed to successfully forage in the forest. This spiritual preparation is tied to acknowledging the other inhabitants of the forest. These inhabitants include spirits and non-human animals. In Sikkimese Buddhism, many of these animals, including the red pandas, which is very popular, it's a national animal, red pandas, flying squirrels, tigers, which is very rare now, boars and bears, and even birds are considered to be protector deities of the region. Many mammals live in high altitude forests rather than near villages. However, Himalayan brown bears and tree bears are quite common. In West Sikkim, they are referred to in Bhutia as Akutom, which means Uncle Bear. So then question arises, what does this title reflect about interspecies relationships in West Sikkim? Do people understand bears to be their uncles? Such naming indicates another form of the types of relatedness chronicled by anthropologist Radhika Govindrajan in her ethnography of interspecies relations in her research in the Central Himalayas. In Bhutia language, the use of the term aku is specially loaded. I've already talked about the meaning of aku, which means uncle. So use of aku, which is uncle, is actually very loaded. This is due to the patriarchal context of Sikkimese society, where uncles play a significant role as father figure replacements. They can be also as mediators for arranging marriages. They are also very important for settling land disputes and other forms of community ties. We can talk about that later. Their significance and authority to shape the lives of those within their family groups makes the title Aku representative of power and need for respect. So Akubari is named Akubari because it is a chili worthy of respect. Rinchen Chogil, a Bhutia man in his 90s, explained to me that in his words, quote, Akubari are so hot and they can burst your heart. Oh my God, they can burst your heart. You need to be careful with them and eat them slowly or tempered with other flavors. Otherwise, your heart will burst. In same way, Akutam, Uncle Bear, are deadly. You need to avoid them, or if you see one, get down on the ground. Get down on the ground. Akubari and Akutam are uncles because we need to respect them. If we do, we can live together, unquote. Yeah, the title of Aku is there for cautionary, cautions. Its use establishes relations between humans and other species in the landscape, and it demands, I think, appropriate interactions. In an extension of appropriate relations, bari, meaning to blaze or burn, which is the chili, the bari, which means blaze or burn, can also be used as a name for humans, very interestingly. In West Sikkim, it is regularly used as part of an informal name in Bhutia and Lepcha communities to indicate that an individual is quick to anger. Yeah. The nickname acts as a warning to people approaching the bari, approaching he or her or they, approaching them, to be aware of their temper because they are so hot that without any reason they might just spark at you. And it is additionally a way to chastise the bearer of the name, to control control their anger, basically. So yeah, it has got many connotations there. So this connections to ethics and relationship is illustrative of broader way that Akubari views relations. Akubari are no longer commonly found in the forests, but these days instead they can find them in kitchen gardens near rural houses, and you can find them in pots in the terraces in the urban settings, in the urban houses, where they are cultivated for cooking, fermenting, and even as medicines. Hospitality and commensality are major concerns in Sikkimese life. In Buddhist Bhutia communities in rural West Sikkim, interpersonal relations are highly mediated using body language and language registers according to different ethnic and religious groups. And these concerns for acknowledging hierarchy are also embedded in relationships with other non-human inhabitants of the land. Many regular Buddhist rituals held in Sikkimese domestic shrines are related in some way to hospitality and feedings. Chilies are not directly offered to the deities in these rituals, but they are offered to lamas and other ritual officials, along with other delicacies such as gyari and momo which is famously known as momos, dumplings, as well as other products from kitchen gardens, including cow milk cheese, millet-derived beer known as chung. So akubari helps to balance food and taste, and is believed to heighten enjoyment, thereby fueling the rituals. So akubari are also offered to the deities indirectly through their non-human consumers. Here it's very interesting. You can find this. Frequent lament. I'm sorry to show this late. These are some of the delicacies that you find, and you can see in the middle, there's akubari pickle, chilies at the side. Here is dumplings, momo. And of course, yari, I can't show it today because that is much more traditional. This is more of a tourist kind of food. And you have different sorts of akubari pickle here with different other pickles. Must be bamboo shoots there. And then mushroom, not mushroom, I'm sorry, dumplings, momos, with again pickle there in the middle. So apart from that, akubaris are also offered to the deities indirectly through their non-human consumers. Frequent lament during the harvest times for akubari is that farmers all too often find them on the ground already consumed, because there is one bird that actually attacks this chili. And this non-human culprit is none other than, in Bhutia it's called, the name of the bird is called Tephinam, and in Nepali it's known as Kalchura. And Tephinam, the Bhutia name, also can be, there's also a different name for Tephinam, which is also known as Hlai Pichung. Hlai Pichung means the bird of the gods. In English, it's known as the blue whistling thrush, a common species of bird that is found throughout Sikkim. So these small birds are famous for their distinctive kind of songs. They have got a very sweet singing tones, and Tephinams are heard twice in a day singing, especially in the morning hours. Somewhere it'll start somewhere around 6:30, which is very early, and then it sings around evening times, which is around 4:30 to 5. And are associated with Buddhist practice of making water offerings in the domestic shrines. So in the morning when Tephinam sings, it means it's time for offering chopa. In the morning, they are believed to wake up slumbering Buddhists to get them to make morning offerings, because people are a bit lazy in the morning. So whenever they hear the song of Tephinam, it makes them actually wake up from the bed. Whereas in the evening time, they remind people to empty the water bowls and clean the chosham, clean the shrine. So Tephinam have an unusual appetite for akubari. If there's one human or non-human, species that is to attack akubari, it's none other than this bird. So akubari is seen then as a fuel for their prayer reminders, and therefore plays an important role as part in an interspecies chain of offerings. So they can also be the interesting part is they can also be offering in themselves, uh, which is quite sad actually. The bodies of newly hatched Tephinam chicks, when they're very, very young, they are sought after by healers, as they are held to be effective medicine for respiration problems and even piles. Ooh, that's a bad news for Tephinam there. In response, Tephinam, they build their nest in a very difficult places, like for example in stream areas or in the rivers and even in the gorge, where it will be very difficult for humans to trace their nest. So yeah, Akubari is therefore the central point in an intersecting system of relatedness. Eating and commensality fuse part of this system, but behavioral and ethical guidance is also part of what makes Akubaris so tasty as food for thought in village Sikkim. So how did Uncle Chili become popular and known to companies such as Patanjali? Very interesting question. This shift to new scales reflects Sikkim's history. In the decades after Sikkim became part of India in 1975, new roads and hotels were built to cater for a growing tourist industry. While there was an inflow of tourists seeking the mountain vista views, there was also an outflow of Sikkimese young people seeking education. And as time went on, employment in the cities on the plains. For Sikkimese migrants, the cities were as sites of opportunity and education, places to gain experience that they took back with them to their state. In the cities of India, Sikkimese migrants often band together with other Northeast people due to shared experiences of prejudice and racism. The wonderful Northeast Indian anthropologist Dolly Kikon has written powerfully about how this prejudice and racism is often connected to food differences. Sikkimese young people from across different ethnic and cultural groups that I interviewed, who had studied throughout in the cities of Delhi, Calcutta, Mumbai, Chennai, and other important places, relate to me their excitement about returning to Sikkim during holidays so that they could eat beef and pork and some of their other favorite delicacies. For many years, Akubari pickle was homemade and sent with students, packaged in recycled, what they call known as the Horlicks bottles or Horlicks containers. That's Horlicks is a drink. So whenever the drink finishes, the empty bottles are used as chili containers. So in the 2010s, most Sikkimese young people stayed on in cities after they found employment soon after their graduation. So this meant that there was an increased demand for Akubari pickle, or Akubari chili, in the Indian urban centers, which has led to the development of mass factory production and entrance of national chains such as Patanjali. Corporate interest in Akubari and its potential for mass production and the GI tag have been loaded for the opportunities they will bring to Sikkimese producers. But ultimately, as Sarah Besky's work on Darjeeling tea has suggested, the benefits of factories and GI tags respectively do not always filter down evenly to those performing the labor or communities who live around or are displaced by production centers. In Sikkim, the growth of interest around Akubari led the price per kilogram to drop because so many farmers were growing it with the hope that Patanjali would purchase their crops. In villages in Sikkim, anxieties about popularization and commodification of akubari and the potential downsides of the GI tag are not often the center point of discussion. Instead, concerns and questions about akubari's change of status revolve around a crucial element of akubari, that is its taste, the taste that matters. In West Sikkim, Selron Dichin, a woman in the 90s who began growing akubari in her kitchen since her childhood days, lamented to me as follows, in her words, quote, "Akubari doesn't taste the same anymore. It just isn't as hot. That flavor isn't there. When we were young, there's no way one people could have eaten an entire akubari with a plate of food. We just needed the tiniest sliver to get the taste. I would use just the tiniest sliver in making an entire karai of fried rice for my children. But now you see, people can eat the entire pickle akubari without any problem," end quote. So she speculated that the decline in spice may be due to the commercial growing practices now common for akubari. Her friend Pasanki, a lecture woman from the same village, agreed. In Pasanki's words, akubari had such a strong and a distinctive smell. There was nothing like it. These new ones are different. They are less delicious. Such concerns were echoed by many other community members that I talked to from across different ethnic and age groups. When I mentioned the Scoville score or the Scoville scale measurement, that put akubari at a much lower pungency than the Bujolokia or the ghost chili. They were incredulous and stated that this was further evidence that akubari has been modified as it has spread. Just as akubari becomes accessible to unprecedented consumers and is claimed as an exemplar of Sikkimese identity, the authenticity of this widely available akubari is contested by Sikkimese consumers and kin. The multi-species relationships that connected Uncle Chili to human and avian residents in West Sikkim have changed as akubari has gone from being a local crop grown for household consumption to nationally circulated commodity pickled in large factories. These changes represent new economic opportunities for villagers, an alternative model to monocrop cash crop that dominate West Sikkimese agriculture and generate new communities for urban Sikkimese migrants. But they also bring new forms of inequality and fundamental change in commensality and kinship across species and beyond the humans. Concerns about authenticity reflect these changes. The question remains, in the future, will there be enough Uncle Chili to go around? And will akubari's status as an uncle continue to be acknowledged? Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. And Tuji Chila.
Thank you so much. Kalsangla, if you could join us by video and unmute, that would be great. Thank you so much. That was so interesting. So the floor is open for questions. I have a number of questions, but if someone wants to go ahead of me, that's totally fine. Maybe I'll start. So Kalsangla, the first question I have for you is to do with the blue bird that you described. I was trying to sort of get a sense of what the relationship is between your community and this particular bird, because it was mixed in the sense that you described the bird as like attacking Akubari, but then also as a prompt for ritual practices. And I'm trying to get a sense of whether that bird is seen as like in a positive light as a community member, or as in some way antagonistic, given it's attacking Akubari. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for joining. And regarding the bird, Tefinam, which is called Kultura in Nepali. It does actually have a positive kind of take. The bird is actually very respected. You can already tell from the title that has already, achieved, known as Hlai Pichung. That is a term used in Bhutia language. Pichung means bird. So it's a god's bird, bird of the gods, to remind, as I have just put it in my slide and the PowerPoint, to remind to the people to us kind of awake from the slumbering stage. Basically, people can get very lazy. Second term, they call it gona mi sheluk. So in order to rise them from their bed, so when they hear this tune, especially for practitioners, it's a reminder saying, oh, I can't be sleeping, because the bird is already signaling. It's like an alarm clock for practitioners. So it does have a very kind of a high name, kind of respected in that way. And practitioners especially relate very much with Tefinam, especially even for keeping time. It's a bird, very clever bird. It's an alarm. It's like a modern kind of Apple Watch during those days. And so when the bird sings, then it's especially in the evening. Morning time, generally people, that's what I heard from seniors, practitioners and other non-practitioners. In the morning hours, it's usually people can tell like it's time to wake up. But especially during the evening time, when you are so busy with your daily activities, you forget at times to do away with chopa, to do away with the chopa bowls, the seven bowls, the offering. So usually people get very busy and they lose their time. But this bird, whenever you hear them sing around 4:30 to 5, then that's a really good kind of a coverage, so that you actually alert yourself and they say, oh, I should go back and do away the chopa. So it's actually a very positive kind of support for practitioners as well as non-practitioners. Non-practitioners who are in the village setup. And the other question, the downside of Tefinam, I think Buddhist practitioners, I think they're generally very compassionate, not only with Tefinam, especially practitioners, they have compassion for all sentient beings. That's understood. But for the non-practitioners, especially those farmers who are farming this akubari, right, in their garden, and you can just imagine, especially after the rumor of Patanjali coming to those villages and exciting all the villagers to plant in large quantities. And they have their minds blown up, thinking like they can have a lot of money, which is a replacement of kind of mono cash crop that I talked in my paper. That's about cardamom. and there's another crop, Sikkim was very famous, is the large cardamoms, which actually there was a blight, and for that reason there was no good harvest. So in order to replace that, farmers were excited to actually see what can akubari bring change. Can akubari replace cardamom? So in that process, they were super excited, and they planted these red chilies, akubari, on large quantities. In fact, you can see, like, not only the kitchen garden, sometimes you can see the whole field fully with akubari plantation. And I'm talking in that terms. So in that terms, when Tefinam gets inside and does his job, I think Tefinam, had a kind of a tough time. Maybe respectfully put, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you. I noticed we have a question in the chat. Maybe I'll go to that. So it says, Dale Kursani is one of my daily intake. Just a question. If there is a possibility that the flaming extreme flavor of akubari enhance the emotion or temptation that deter people for peaceful meditation or mind meditation. So is akubari, influencing meditation in some way?
That's a good question. Huh? That's a really good question. And I've been thinking about it for a long, long time. Will flavor and pungency and taste, does it have connection with meditation? It's a really interesting question. Even if you follow the Vinaya rules, in the Vinaya, it talks about certain food, certain like hot food, like spicy foods, whether they are good for meditative practice or not. The certain foods, like, for example, garlic and onions and some items like spice, certain things, certain spices like that are kind of thought very, very carefully during certain Buddhist calendar, like Tege, Chechu, Namkang, depending upon the moon position. But as far as akubari is concerned, I actually haven't heard much from great practitioners. Meditation practitioners. Sometimes I've actually had an opportunity to sit with them and had some conversation. Chilies usually don't matter that much, especially regarding to chilies like akubari. And I got a very interesting opportunity to talk with some of the practitioners, some sub-practitioners that I wouldn't like to call out their names. And in their practices, of course, we're talking in terms of Vajrayana practitioners, which this does not mean that it applies to all the Buddhist practitioners. I would like to make that very clearly. But for Vajrayana practitioners, certain flavors are quite helpful to focus. So that's a very interesting. I've been thinking this for a long, long time, and I've been also working on other flavors and smells, like sang, which has got like very many different collections of species. In sang collection, for example, like in Rio Sangchi, if it is possible, you can gather 108 different types of varieties of species, and all has different flavor and smell, so that the smell has the potential to kind of develop
for practitioners as well as non-practitioners to guide or channelize their senses. So we talk again in sense of different types of senses here, but in this term, the sense is kind of a positive senses. So it does have the flavor and the fragrance, which can spark certain types of meditative focus. So so we can talk about different like flavors and senses, but for here I think, from my own opinion and some of the opinions shared by some of the masters, the pungency or the flavors, sometimes depending upon what type of circumstances and what type of food you're dealing, it does have positive effect in meditative practices. Means not discriminating flatly.
Right.
If you be mindful, then you can help yourself with what type of products and substances that you're using. Mindfully, you can actually use them very positively. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Yeah. But pungency and akubari does have a unique sort of kind of a flavor and smell. Yeah, it does have. I don't know how many of you have come in contact with the akubari, but especially if you find the raw one, you just chip it, and you don't need to take it very close to your nose, but you just slice it and just leave it there. And you can get that flavor, a very distinct flavor. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Next is Kikidomo Bhutia. You can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello, Tashidule again. Thank you so much for your talk, and I really missed, like I was already missing home and looking at all the photos of food. I was literally drooling here. But yeah, thank you so much for your talk. And I wanted to ask like very quickly, like 2 questions. I was wondering, this was first time that I heard of like akubari as akubari. Like I always heard, like since young, I have always heard it as akarbari, which is like very spicy chili. I've never heard of akubari, so it was completely new for me. And I actually like was wondering whether you could tell us more about whether you have found something to do with like a concept of whether like akarbari or aku tom was in a way like related to these supernatural entities, in particular, like, you know, for example, in most of my examples, I have found out that, like, for example, Ajutak, like grandfather tiger or something like that. So in that context, I was wondering, because Ajuta has always been like in mine, like the stories that I have heard, I found that there are this Akutom and Ajuta are especially like messenger or like a protector or of the yogis who are meditating in the forest of Sikkim, and he would like the Tom and the Ta will carry water to, you know, the yogis who are meditating, or they are like the chef in the kitchen who would cook. But I was wondering whether you have found some narrative, because this akubari was completely new to me and I'm so interested and intrigued by it. So I would love to hear more whether you have some narratives about some kind of supernatural like agency that they have, or they are kind of like a protector or messenger to some supernatural, like, you know, the guardian, the Yula Jibda of Denjong, whether there are something like that, number 1. And if we have time, like number 2, very quickly, I wanted to ask that, and I wanted to ask, like, you know, for example, you mentioned that akubari have a, you know, it's in like in I don't know much about multi-species environment, but from what I understood, it has some kind of like a very social and economical and political aspect attached to it, like the society kind of dictates how you see like, you know, how you symbolize certain like object or animal in this cases. So I was wondering, because for example, Akubari in Sikkim is Akubari, and in Nagaland, as you mentioned, also like in other parts of Northeast, is called Bhut Jolokia, which means like devils, like Jolokia means like burning devils or something like that. So somehow it seems like in other part of northeastern India, it is kind of demonized. And in Sikkim, it's kind of, you are mentioning like something like mindfulness and some like meditation and things like, you know, pungency in Buddhist aspect. I was wondering whether it has a, you know, very social, like, you know, like a kind of like a way or like surrounding towards it. And if it is there, then let's say from Lupo's perspective or a Buddhist perspective, it kind of makes sense. But how do you explain it among other communities that are, you know, in majority? For example, like 75% of the population are Nepali, or let's say half of them are Hindus. So in this context, how does this narrative shifts or transform, or how does it adjust in the current scenario? I hope.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kila. I've been actually, you know, attending to all these thoughts myself for some time now. So yeah, these are some of the questions that I have already, you know, gone through, and you know, I have actually talked with quite a lot of people from, especially in this context, I'm talking about Denjong, Sikkim, especially from the West Sikkim perspective. So it's coming from Nup Dejong. So Nup Dejong's experience with the Akar, with the Bari. Yeah, it is very much Nup Dejong perspective about the concept Aku. And as I've just, you know, already talked in my paper, I think sometimes it wasn't clear for that reason, because technology sometimes is not that dependable. Sometimes clarity, there's some problem with the clarity. So I'm very happy to share. So yeah, the concept Aku. Aku is, it's a, I think all over Sikkim we use the term, but especially in West Sikkim context, Aku actually is the paternal uncle, you know, and there's always this kind of gender role very much given to the patriarchy side. So Akus in that way is kind of interrelated. I think they borrowed the concept, and because Akus are not to be feared, I think the use of fear, I would strictly not use that in a human sense, in a human relation, but it's something like kind of a syncretic, you know, there's so many things happening at the same time that you actually, when you have a person whom you really aspire or whom you really respect and whom you think they're very, very, you know, high in the sense in knowledge, wisdom, and who can impart kind of beautiful teachings and life learning lessons, and at the same time who can be a guide in terms of family as well as domestic as well as in spiritual religious sphere in all sense. So I think from a Sikkimese term, I think we look at Aku in that sense. You know, Aku is something who is knowledgeable, who is, you know, who has got depth of information, that who could always come and protect and safeguard, you know, who is like very warm and who can actually take care of things out there, you know. So to those kind of people, you have some kind of, you know, there's an inexpressible some kind of a relation and a respect, and also at the same time it can be a little bit of fear, because, like, you know, when generally it tends to happen with many people, like in my own experience, when I meet my religious you know, teachers or my teachers in terms of like Dharma teachers, and also sometimes even with teachers who teach other subjects, and it's about how beautiful they are, how knowledgeable they are, and how a beauty transforms into something kind of a power, and at the same time a little bit of a fear. That kind of exchange taking place. So from that sense, I think Sikkim, especially from a West Sikkim context, I think they have that kind of a same respect to the Akutom, which again it is a kind of a relatedness, interspecies relatedness, where Akutom is now in the modern day context. I think things are changing, but during back during like 1940s, 50s, when I hear stories from elderly people and the stories that they told me about how this, these creatures and animals in the jungle are not just ordinary animals. They are sometimes very much kind of, they can transform, they can manifest, and they can be jidas, they can be yullas, and they can be protectors of a region. So in that sense, Tom, bears coming out during 1930s and 40s is very rare, and this also is a strong message for climate change and global warming, I think. In my other article, I have actually mentioned in detail about this. So it sends a message. I think during those days in 30s and 40s, you rarely actually hear wild animals venturing out in the human habitats. If by chance, sometimes once in a blue moon, if they happen to visit, then they take it differently. They think it like maybe, the Yulla and the Jidas, maybe we must have agitated them. Or maybe we have done something. Maybe we have polluted the environment. Or maybe we must have sent some kind of smoke or a pollution, in a smoke pollution. Maybe we must have burned something, something very sensitive, so that they get agitated and they come out from the deep, dense forest to the human habitat. So that way they have kind of a different perspective, different way of looking at it. But then, and sometimes when they meet them, they are kind of like most of the time they don't attack. But there are a few occasions that bears actually attack humans, depending upon the situation. If, for example, they have burned something very sensitive, if they have burned meat, for example, or if they have burned bones, cracked bones, and if they burned it, and if the smell gets spread out and it goes right in the depth of the jungle, it is really interesting. Actually, I have actually experienced this with myself. Wild animals, forget about wild animals, even cows, domesticated cows get agitated and get really have a different reaction when they actually reach to a spot where there is a cow which has been slaughtered. They could find the senses. They're very sensitive, and they could react in such a way that they can even turn very violent many occasions. So there's there's a high probability that because of all these pollutions through smoke and burned objects, things can get very agitated and come out in human habitat and perhaps might even attack innocent beings. There are some quite good examples about that. And so that's the example of 1930s, 40s. So that's one of the reasons why elderly people, they say that if you in case if you meet Ako Tom, because Tom has to be feared in that sense, because humans actually agitate them. You know, they've agitated them, and they get violent because of human actions. So we need to pay respect, and at the same time, like have a little bit sense of fear, you know, because we actually agitate them. So in the sense that people during those days, they don't like to address to bear as Tom directly. There's some kind of respect that they don't have the guts to say or tell his name, Tom. Nobody has the, this is what the elderly used to tell me. Why did they actually put the name Aku? Rather than saying Tom, which is a direct name, and you know, they actually have the respect. Instead of saying Tom directly, they address the bear as something like Aku. So in the village is very interesting when the bears come out, people generally don't say a bear has come out or Tom is there. Nobody would address that. They would say, oh, there's Aku. Means everybody gets it. Aku has visited. So that becomes a different language, you know, it's a kind of a thing. So that's why I think nobody wants to get attacked. Nobody wants to be eaten or beaten by bear. And at the same time, they have that fear and respect. And that's why they have addressed as Aku, just like Aku from home, who has got so much of responsibility and always address him as Aku. And the same, I think, term they are, I think, kind of using it in that sense. So I think I've gone too much out there, but I can't,
thank you.
you know, avoid because of the story, because this is what I've been told, and I've actually lived with that experience since my childhood days, and they would always use that term as Aku. So in the recent time, because of these topics, so I had to go back and I thought of trying to put back all these things and trying to just tell a story. You know? Yeah. Now I can't remember about the second question. So yeah, so I think the relatedness and the interspecies relation. Interspecies relation in this sense is, I think it's very significant because in this time of climate change and global warming and the Anthropocene, where humans are not only the the person living in this environment, whereas actually I think I also quite agree with Professor Gyatsola about how actually animals and these creatures are very intelligent. Actually, they are very intelligent. For example, in the recent cases, bears just coming out. We have examples. This is actually why I got so interested in writing about this article, is because all over Sikkim, you know, since it's been like 3-4 years, that there is a maximum of bears coming out of jungle, and they're everywhere. They're in the kitchen gardens.
Wow. Yeah.
And some cases they've even attacked humans, and mostly they have attacked lots of other animals, like bears coming out and eating a whole house full of chickens, for example. You know, the poultries. They come and they finished off all the chickens overnight. That happened in North Sikkim, in Pensang area. where actually I went for a Shabdin in Pensang Monastery and happened to stay by a nearby monastery. And then the house where I stayed, they had this experience about how bears came and they slept whole night in the kitchen garden. And the next night they went down to the neighbor's house and then they ate the whole, the poultry. And the next house, they even attacked like pigs, they ate. And so, yeah, I think this is not just like bears, like being brute and being very wildish. I think this is actually, they're trying to tell us a message, telling us that, there is an kind of intervention. Humans, you'll have actually, crossed your limit and you have actually trespassed in our place. And you have made our life very difficult. And you have hunted down all the species in the jungle and small other, animals. So we have nothing to eat. So where should we go? We will come to your kitchen garden. And and at the same time, I think also this takes a negative impact. I think some of the elderly that they told me was that because of the recent human encroachment on Sikkimese land, in the indigenous land, especially about the dams that I've talked about it. There's whole loads of dams in a small state like Sikkim, where the area is so less, the population is just about 600,000. Like in terms of Indian calculation, it's just like 6 lakhs, which is nothing, which is not even comparatively with the population of Chandni Chowk in Delhi, which has got like 17, 18 lakhs. Sikkim just has like 6 point some lakhs of humans living. But in that landscape, you have, this is the heights of greed, actually. You have more than the landscape, you have tunnels. You have mega hydroelectricity dams, which is too much, I think, for the land to bear. And people have been experiencing, like when there's a project going on, when the tunnel diggings are going on, there is a lot of pollution, especially in terms of noise pollutions, and animals are very sensitive. So not only bears, we have been noticing many other species which are not supposed to come out are there. People have been noticing. So like, for example, Himalayan zik, what do you call that? Cheetah and other wild animals, they're venturing out, and which is kind of, they're very sensitive, and it's because of this tunneling and blastings that's taking place under the surface, which agitates them, and they're very sensitive. So they come out, they venture out, and and humans are thinking like these are wild animals, like and they're blaming the wild animal. Actually, in the sense that actually they are sending us a message. They're telling us that you people have crossed your limit, and in the sense that animals are actually giving us kind of teachings about how to take care about your natural surroundings and the environment, not to be too greedy, just to balance and let you have your space and I have my space. In that, like, we can have a harmonious settlement. Otherwise, there's no way out, that we have to come out. And in that sense, they're very clever, actually. We humans, actually, in the Anthropocene, like we are actually supposed to be the dominant figure. We think that way. But in a long run, I think we are, comparatively with what they are going through, we are nothing. I think we are selfish and not clever. I don't like to put the word stupid, but in the end, we go down the drain, taking all of them, because of our doings and because of our not being mindfulness. So in that way, I hope, I think I'll just stop there, I think. just gone too much here. Yeah.
No, that was really illuminating. And we actually are, unfortunately for this session, we're almost out of time. So we'll have to wrap up here. But as I mentioned, I need to organize a final session probably in May where all the speakers can come together and continue the conversation. And so we'll try to find a time that works for all the speakers from this year's series. And that way we can keep going, because we could definitely keep talking for a long time about this. Thank you so much. And so let me just end with some final words here. Let's see, am I spotlighted now? So just on Kelsang Lao, just on behalf of the host center and also the Religion in the Public Sphere initiative at the DSR, we just want to thank you, and thank you everyone for coming today and for participating. So it's been really, really wonderful. And just thanks to my colleagues who have helped organize this. So first to Francis Garrett, the co-organizer of the series, to our work study student, Kayla Boland, who has just been so helpful from the beginning, and we're so grateful for her contributions. To our new director, Sung Jung Kim, who couldn't be here today, but she's the new director of the Host Center. To Betsy Moss, thank you so much for everything as the coordinator. And finally to Sarah Richardson as the producer of the series. Dekila is here today, and I'm very excited that she'll be giving a talk on March 24th. So please attend that if you can. So again, the title of her talk is Mother Wisdom, Learning to Embody Interdependence in the Anthropocene. So with that, we'll have to wrap up for today, but thank you everyone for coming. It's so illuminating. And Kelsang Lao, I really, really appreciate you joining us. It's super, super fascinating, and I can't wait to hear more.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all. Everyone have a safe, take care and be safe. Thank you.
Yeah.